Hey guys, welcome to another video here on All Things Utah, where we discuss all things Utah. In today's video, we're going to talk about the new Salt Lake City International Airport. For those of you that do not know, Salt Lake City opened a brand new terminal, brand new concourses in September of last year. This new facility is designed to replace its predecessor, which was old. And by old, I mean old. We're going to dive into the history of the airport as we explain the reasoning for the new one. Now, a little bit of insight on my background. I grew up with my dad being a pilot. I've been an avigeek from a very young age. In 2008, I got a job at the Salt Lake Airport, helping disabled persons get from one flight to the next. After that, I was a flight attendant for 7 years. So I've had a lot of experience with air travel, with the Salt Lake City Airport, with other airports. And when a new one was announced, I was extremely excited because I saw a lot of problems with the old one. I assumed others did as well, but now that the new one's open, a lot of complaints have come. And in this video, I kind of want to address why the new airport was built, the reasoning for it, the future that it opens up, gives Salt Lake City an opportunity to grow quite a bit. So I think people, for the most part, they thought new airport, it's going to be more convenient. First of all, it's not finished. Second of all, it's big, and that's not changing. The old one was too small. Many didn't even know, but it was extremely small. It was only designed to handle 10 million passengers a year, and we were doing about 3 times as much. So it was long overdue, but the new one is bigger than we need, and that's on purpose. It's designed for future growth. So, like I said, I want to help people understand the reasoning for the new airport, kind of explain the changes and that everything was thought through. It wasn't just an art project, because it is very pretty, but it has a main purpose. So we will dive right into it. We're going to explain the new airport. I want to cover the top 3 complaints I hear is I liked the old one better. Why did they need to build a new one? And there was nothing wrong with the old one. Well, there were a lot of things wrong. So let's get into it. We are going to dive into the history of the Salt Lake Airport and bring you up to date on the new one. Enjoy. The site for the Salt Lake Airport was chosen back in 1911, only 8 years after the Wright brothers' historic first flight. It was a cedar plank runway just off the southern shores of Great Salt Lake. Its central location in the west quickly proved valuable and attracted many aviation legends, among them Glenn Curtiss, who demonstrated the first seaplane in the Great Salt Lake, and Charles Lindbergh, who flew in to show locals his Spirit of St. Louis. In 1920, the airfield was formally established by the city and became the site of an outpost for the U.S. Postal Service as it began delivering mail by air. Perhaps the most historic moment in the airport's history occurred in 1926, when Western Air Express completed the very first commercial flight in the United States. 2 passengers sat on top of U.S. mail bags and rode along with Captain Jimmy James on his regularly scheduled mail delivery flight to Los Angeles. This was the birth of Western Airlines and the continuing status of Salt Lake being the crossroads of the West. This time, however, it wasn't by wagon, train, or car, it was by air. As commercial air travel became more popular, Salt Lake opened a small terminal on the eastern edge of the airfield in 1933. That same year, the airport opened a 3rd runway. For the next 3 decades, Frontier, United, and Western flew through Salt Lake consistently. Frontier advertised the airport as the gateway to Yellowstone. United had Salt Lake as one of its stopping points on its first coast-to-coast route, and Western remained the airport's strongest carrier. In 1952, work began on a larger replacement terminal, and in 1960, operations moved to this larger and more accommodating facility. When airlines began adopting hub-and-spoke route systems, Western Airlines made Salt Lake City one of its largest hubs. In less than 2 decades after its opening, the new terminal became too small for demand. In 1978, a second terminal was constructed to accommodate Western Airlines. By 1984, a 4th concourse was added, and a massive renovation brought both terminals to an, at the time, modern slate color. In 1987, a financially struggling Western Airlines completed a merger with Atlanta-based Delta Airlines. Delta instantly saw the value in Salt Lake, and since acquiring Western, has continued steady growth. In recent years, direct European flights to Amsterdam, London, and Paris have proven to be highly successful for Delta and its international partners. In 2016, KLM became the first European-based airline to fly direct to Salt Lake City. With its history of continued growth, by the mid-1990s, Salt Lake City and Delta Airlines began planning another expansion, far greater than anything that came before it. Concerns with the old facility's layout, environmental impact, and outdated seismic standards became the main push to start over and build a new airport. The common culture in Utah has always been centered on fiscal responsibility, doing things right, and being on time. These standards are the reason behind our motto, the Beehive State. We are excellent at working together to get things done. The new SLC would be no exception. Unlike many other cities that begin large, expensive projects, Salt Lake wanted to ensure that the money was already in place, prevent any tax dollars from being used, and complete everything on time. There were plenty of excuses to rush the project. Perhaps the biggest was being selected to host the 2002 Winter Olympics. The Olympic Games bring in millions of visitors. Host cities will spend billions of dollars in new facilities and transportation upgrades. The justification for quickly rebuilding the airport was clear, but Salt Lake chose to make do with the old airport and ensured the new one was done right. The games came and went, but the crowds of people flying into Salt Lake continued to grow. The airport held on to profits made from concessions, rental cars, landing fees, and any other inflow of cash. Cost estimates led to negotiations with airlines on what they were willing to pay for. Being a Delta hub, there was no doubt the airline wanted to make substantial contributions, as they would benefit the most from a new facility. Understandably, Delta was instrumental in the design and had the greatest influence on the project. Ground broke in 2014 as an active airport operated around the construction site. Phase by phase, traffic patterns were altered, small portions of the old airport were demolished to accommodate new structures, and by September 2020, the first phase was ready to open, remarkably, right on time. The transition occurred mostly overnight. September 14th, all operations were out of the old terminals, and by 4 a.m. on the 15th, everything was up and running in the new terminal. Some of the old gates were still in use until late October, as the final portions of the second linear concourse were completed. By November, the old SLC was vacant and ready for its planned demolition. While unnoticed by many, there actually were a lot of things wrong with the old airport. Airline hubs weren't even a thing when Terminal 1 opened, and it was designed to serve the local population, not to be a major connecting hub. So as times changed and Western Airlines grew its operations, addition after addition kept being added to the old terminal. It was sufficient in the beginning, but that didn't last long. Soon Salt Lake was handling 27 million passengers a year, in an airport designed for only 10 million. What was a small parking lot in 1960 became a congested roadway and parking garage. You were lucky to find an available spot in the parking garage as it filled up so quickly. There were 12 crosswalks that slowed traffic down trying to connect each lane with the terminals, and security lines often extended into the parking garage and baggage claim areas. Behind security, small concourses mimicked crowded New York City sidewalks as thousands of passengers rushed between gates all at the same time. The layout of the concourses made connecting for passengers relatively easy, but on the operational side, it was a nightmare for the airlines. Extending like fingers from the terminal area, the side-by-side, close proximity concourses could only allow one plane to taxi in and out of each gate area at a time. This often left aircraft stuck on the taxiways waiting for access to a gate. Inside the gate areas, there were not enough seats, and good luck finding a power outlet. With the new airport, every single issue was solved. The new parking garage is double the size of its predecessor. It also has a system showing drivers available spots using cameras and overhead indicators. Instead of all traffic lanes being on the same level, congestion was solved by the use of bridges, above traffic walkways, stoplights, and an increase in lanes. Replacing single-floor terminals, the new SLC terminal is stacked in 3 levels. Ticket counters are on the top level, where the passenger drop-off lanes are. Down 1 floor are baggage claim and security. Also included on this level is a large passenger greeting room to prevent overcrowding around the baggage claim carousels, which is something we often saw in the old airport. The bottom level houses the International Arrivals Center, bringing all travelers into the same building. The security screening checkpoint is significantly larger than the old one. With 16 lanes total, it is equipped with many high-tech features and modern updates for ease. Bins are automatically dispensed and are 25% larger than the old ones. They even have a radio frequency identification tag that provides better accountability for each passenger's items. 3 spots on each X-ray belt allow multiple people to load their items at the same time. If there's something the X-ray can't decipher, the bag will automatically be diverted onto a different belt to be searched by TSA. all clear bags are accessible for passengers to pick up and proceed out of the screening area. The concourses are massive in comparison to the old airport. Ceilings are 4 times higher, and the width of the concourses are nearly 3 times larger. Gate areas have plenty of seats, all individually equipped with a cup holder and charging station. Windows are large and allow plenty of natural light to shine in. As travel resumes to its normal levels, thousands can connect through Salt Lake and will no longer be crammed together in a small facility. Most complaints I hear about the new airport are in regards to the long walk to the B gates. As previously stated, the current tunnel is temporary. The permanent one couldn't be built as it runs under the site of the old D and E gates. Once completed, you will be able to walk directly from the main terminal out to the B gates. The current tunnel is 1,220 feet long, but the good news is the new one will be shortened to 900 feet long. Something to keep in mind is this project is far from being finished. Before COVID, there were plans to use some of the old airport's concourses while Phase 2 was being completed. Now, with air travel demand down significantly, they were able to demolish all of the old airport at the same time, creating the opportunity to complete the second phase, possibly 2 years ahead of schedule, and save over $300 million. Something I think nearly everyone agrees on is that the airport is stunningly beautiful. When the public was asked to provide input on the things they'd like to see in a new airport, the number one request was to make it better reflect Utah. They listened, and the new airport definitely gives people a small taste of the beauty all throughout Utah. The exterior walls of the airport match the colors seen on our famous Red Rock deserts. Artwork depicts canyons, waterfalls, and animal life seen in Utah. And the large windows I mentioned earlier showcase the local mountains and the open skies above Great Salt Lake. I personally hated the colors of the old airport. The brown exterior walls screamed 1970s. Thankfully, the interior walls had been repainted gray. When I was a little kid, I totally remember them being orange and brown. The only reflections of Utah in the old airport were some pictures and paintings on various walls. The new airport shows everyone Salt Lake City isn't only a place to connect, it's a wonderful place to stay, too. So to sum things up, the airport has a long history. It is one of the oldest airports in the world. Its last terminal was also 60 years old. It was time for a new one. I understand the idea that you could get from one flight to the other much faster in the old one, but I think over time, Utahns and others who travel through Salt Lake City will grow to love the new airport. It is massive, and like I said at the very beginning of this video, that is on purpose. We are poised for a lot of growth in the future. Delta CEO Ed Bastian was quoted saying, well, I shouldn't quote, something along the lines of, he wanted Salt Lake to be the Atlanta of the West. Now, if you've flown through Atlanta, you know that that is one massive airport. Side note, it's the largest airport, the busiest airport in the world. And Delta definitely wants to continue expansion in Salt Lake City. There's room on the ground to keep building. We could see a C, D, E, and even an F concourse. I don't know if we'll ever get that big, but they have created the room to grow, as he also said, Ed Bastian said, infinite growth. So, when you travel through Salt Lake, some things to keep in mind. Give yourself time. Don't plan on having a 5-minute connection and you can make it. Security is much bigger. Ticket counters are much bigger. It's going to take you longer to get to your gate. So it's mostly just giving yourself time. The airport director gave a recent video kind of going over the same things I did, explaining why, and addressing the complaints on it so long to get to the B gates. That will be shortened. That will get quicker with that new tunnel that we covered. But it's just going to take some patience, time, and I think we'll come around to liking it. It's going to take some time. New things are hard to adjust to. So, thanks for joining us here today. Have a wonderful day. It has been a pleasure covering the Salt Lake City Airport with you. If you liked what you just saw, I invite you to please subscribe to our YouTube channel here, All Things Utah. You can do so by clicking on that red box down there that says subscribe. Next to it is a little bell. If you click on that, you'll be notified every time we post a new video.